Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast explores the transition to net zero and the systems driving real change in how we move, live and power our world. Every week I sit down with the people leading that change, those offering insight, innovation and impact in many ways people don't fully see until they hear their stories. If you're ready for real conversations that inspire action and drive change, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey. And let's cut through the noise and build a better future together. So on today's episode I have with me Tracy Kearns, and she is the head of EV charging infrastructure for Welsh Government, and we have been chatting so much on and off for the past few months, haven't we, Tracy? Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for rolling out that red carpet at the beginning. That made my day.
Yes, for those of you that don't know the platform that we use, that's kind of what it says when you log in. It says rolling out the red carpet, and we did it specifically for Tracy today. Well, no, it does it for everybody. But yeah. So I just want to kind of give a little bit of context to how we met, and it was one of those things, wasn't it? We are both originally from up north, and I connected with you probably back in about February time, didn't I? And we were just messaging each other on LinkedIn, and you asked me where I was from, and we'd not spoken then, had we? Because I asked you if you wanted to come on the podcast then, and then I found out you were Northern as well. So it was kind of like, oh, because I can't remember what you said. There was something that you said, my pronunciation. It was nice to hear it, and it just tickled me, as my mother would have said.
Yeah, but, I can't remember what it was, but I remember listening to the first podcast and going, "Oh my God, she's so Northern."
But that's hilarious because I've lived down south for longer than I've lived up north now. You just don't lose your accent. So you are originally from Sheffield, aren't you?
Correct. Yep.
And you've lived in Wales for how long now?
Oh, 27 and a half years. And I do speak a bit of Welsh. Oh. And when my daughter was little, she said, "Oh, you're so clever, Mummy. You speak 4 languages." And I was like, "Do I?" And she said, "Yeah, you speak English, because that's what all small children call English. And you speak Welsh, and you speak French, and you speak Yorkshire." So she definitely thought it was a separate language.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the difference. When I moved down here, mine was 1995, so you moved down 2 years before me, and having my son I had him in 2005, but when he was old enough to say to kind of work out that I said bath rather than bath, or laugh rather than laugh, and then there's the whole thing. And if you're from up north, sorry if you're listening, you'll get this, but if you're from down south, you'd be like, what? The whole thing between dinner and tea and lunch and dinner, that's just a whole different conversation when you've got small children. Really is.
And bread cakes, baps, cobs rolls. That's another one.
And barm cakes. I mean, what's all that about? So anyway, for all of you watching and listening, it's gonna be an interesting conversation, because we've talked so much on and off since we first started talking anyway, haven't we?
Yep.
And it's brilliant. I want to start off by looking at, and you giving us a little bit of your background, because it's been very varied, hasn't it? And I've done quite a lot of stuff, but so have you. So talk a little bit about what you've done and how you got to be head of EV charging for Welsh Government when you're from Yorkshire.
Okay, so I started off doing an accounting and finance degree, and I got a placement at Boots, which I was really excited about. And I actually managed to convince them it'd be a good idea to sponsor me to go back in my final year. They'd not done that before, but it meant that I ended up not having a massive overdraft, so that was cool. So I worked there, then I went to an engineer. Oh, actually, when I was at Boots, I nearly took a job in marketing. I was offered a job in marketing because I've always found that really interesting. But I was so close to qualifying as an accountant, I thought it was a really stupid thing to do. Not very sensible. So I did the sensible thing, not the interesting thing. Then I worked for an engineering firm, and then I was in the kind of mad position that people probably wouldn't believe nowadays, but I had 7 interviews in 2 days.
Oh my God.
Oh no, it was amazing. It was like there was an insurance firm, there was I think one was Revlon, one was Mars, one was a insurance company that no longer exists. I can't remember who the others with, and Hitachi, and I took the job with Hitachi, and I loved it because it was a sales organisation. I was working with sales and marketing guys, and really sort of in the middle of things. And it was so long ago that just before I went on maternity leave, one of my divisions was sort of business systems, so it was computers and stuff. And the guy went, and it wasn't the one that I was that interested in. And the guy went, oh, look at this, we've got this wonderful new thing on my laptop. Look at it, it's called Windows and it's going to change the world. So
Well, it kind of
I,
did.
I was working with Windows. And then had a little bit of a career break when I had children, worked for a family business, and then I moved down to Wales before I had my youngest daughter, but then I moved to Cardiff and did an MBA, which was quite entertaining because I was getting divorced. I got three small children,
Oh
and
gosh.
there was one famous night where I finished a piece of coursework at 7 a.m. and went in at 9 a.m. to hand it in. So it was
Oh,
quite hard work, but yeah. So I did my MBA, came out. I was qualified really early. Came out thinking this is it. Everybody's going to want me. And I was told I could get a job as an accounts assistant. So I was like, no, I don't think so. I'm a qualified management accountant. And so I took a job at a solicitor's practice because the family business was solicitor's practice. Doing their, I'm trying to think what I was, practice manager. So picked up quite a bit of HR, looked after the staff, did, everything from organising IT people and marketing people, so the whole kit caboodle. And then I went for a job because it was quite away from home and the kids were little. And you get that phone call saying so and so's been knocked over in the playground, and you've got a
oh yeah.
45-minute drive, and it feels like a 3 hour one. So I got a job close to home at a hotel, went for a finance job, but got a HR job because I picked that there. And then serendipitously, was sitting down at a wedding reception talking to somebody who said, what do you do? And I said, oh, I work with Karen. She got the finance job, I got the HR one. And he said, oh, we need somebody to do HR. And so before I could even tell him I was a brilliant management accountant, I went, okay, let's talk. So that led to 9 incredibly fun years in a cost and project management consultancy, doing all sorts, HR, client audits, for big construction contracts. I was the I'm trying to think what I was ISO 9001 internal auditor, which meant I could go and visit every
Yeah.
little offices. So yeah, lots and lots of random stuff in my background. And then when I didn't think I could really do much more there, I joined a startup, which stopped fairly shortly after. And again, just by pure luck, one of my former colleagues was chatting to somebody and they said, oh, I didn't know Tracy wasn't working at present. So I was interviewed by Welsh Government because this person said, you're just what we need. Not Welsh Government, Transport for Wales. I'm lying about where I went. And that was kind of weird. So again, it was 2016 and they've now got thousands and thousands and thousands of staff. And when I went there, I was staff member number 3.
Wow. Gosh.
We'd got a lot of people on secondment from Welsh Government, we'd got a few consultants, and we were procuring the next rail contract, which has been running since 2018. So Transport for Wales is really interesting because I've seen it grow from the point where, you would open the door and let people in the morning, etc., etc., to just like a massive, massive organisation. And interestingly, when I went in, the first thing I was doing was finance before the finance team was set up. So that was quite ironic when people told me I couldn't do that anymore. So that was really cool. And then last year, there were a number of opportunities came up for us to do secondments with Welsh Government. and one of those was in EV charging, and it just sounded really interesting. So I knew the guy who was heading that up, a guy called Robin Beckman, who's since retired, and really respected him. And just when I was offered the opportunity, I was just so excited. So I've been there 13 months now, got 11 left because it's 2 years to common, and I've just absolutely love it.
I was going to say, so it sounds like from when you started working for Transport for Wales, that kind of you've been working in different infrastructure projects, haven't you? Like you said about the whale, sorry, not whale, the rail, well, the rail project, and also kind of moving into EV charging. How familiar did that feel from kind of like an infrastructure point of view?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So because I was doing finance and helping out with anything else that needed doing as well to begin with, I wasn't working on the infrastructure projects, but obviously seeing all of the paperwork that comes through when it was just me looking at it for finance, you sort of got a really good feel for what the guys were doing. Then I sort of moved into business partner finance role briefly, and then had an opportunity to move into the bus team because they got a very specific project. So I think it's just interesting because it's changed. So I can't actually say I'd worked on big infrastructure projects there, just different business support projects really.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what does your job look like? What is kind of like a day in the life of the head of EV infrastructure in Wales look like?
Probably less glamorous than you would think. So it's everything. I mean, I suppose the main part of my job is making sure that we're translating policy into delivery. So I'm sponsor for Transport for Wales. I've got a brilliant colleague over there, Tony Clayton, who's just awesome, who heads that team up. They, for the last few years, have assessed grant applications on our behalf. They work with the local authorities and try and advise them, so acting as a centre of excellence. They also offer training. They work with the likes of Cenex, so we've actually run the same Cenex training that they ran in England, but Welshified it a bit and offered that to all 22 local authorities. So that was something really useful this year. So yeah, act as sponsor to them, deal with everybody from members of the public writing in with correspondence for ministers to speaking to charge point operators, attending events, which is obviously where I get to meet lots of useful people like EVA or Charge UK, or just people from other parts of the UK who've had different experiences of working with charge point operators, or trying to get stuff in the ground and finding out what's worked, what hasn't worked, and trying to disseminate that knowledge through Wales really. So yeah, it's pretty varied. Don't get 2 days the same, which is good.
I was going to say, actually, Transport for Wales took charge safe training fairly soon, didn't they? So I know Tony kind of must have recognised that was really important. So Kate Tyrrell, who runs Charge Safe, and kind of all of the things that she does, and it felt like that was being taken really seriously early on, wasn't it?
Yeah, so earlier this year they did their Charge Safe reaccreditation training with Kate, and I joined them for that day, and that was really interesting. But Tony's been instrumental in the advisory stuff around the first PAS 1899 issue, and they're going through a sort of revision now, so he's involved with that as well. So that's something that's really, really important to him. And when Welsh Government launched a charging infrastructure framework last year, PAS 1899 was absolutely at the centre of that.
And that makes sense, really, doesn't it? You know, because actually, why would you not build it around that kind of inclusion and accessibility piece anyway? So
Yeah,
that's
and
really really important.
yeah, and I find it really interesting when you speak to either a charge point operator who's been working with designers to come up with some really cool designs for how that's going to work with their charging infrastructure. But I also was looking at some photographs from Newport City Council, and they'd got a multi-storey car park where they had allocated 4 ordinary parking bays and turned it into a fully accessible parking bay. So it means that
Hmm.
you can access it from the rear, the sides, park it forwards, park it backwards, do whatever you want. And that was one of the things, I can't remember exactly what the number is, but Tony said that there's about 23 different variations of how you can park a car and get in and out of it from a PAS 1899 perspective. So it's really interesting to see when people do come up with those creative ideas. It's really cool.
I've seen a lot of innovation happening through this sector, and it's been really really good to see and really interesting. And I was just thinking about our conversation before we started recording, because so you got involved with the GREENFLEET EV Rally last year, didn't you? Over in Wales, and this year they're coming, and you're going to be involved again. But we were so we could talk about the rally and how you got involved. But the thing that I was thinking of, it was about, you know, where people have this way of thinking about EVs, and they're going to, you know, once it's kind of going to take people's jobs and all this kind of stuff. But and the whole point of the rally is to kind of recognise that EVs are a good thing, and you know it's about reducing pollution, but also looking at the other side of the jobs that it's actually going to create across multiple areas, isn't it?
Yeah, so the first week of my new job, the UK rally was passing through Hay on Wye. So I
I was
decided,
there. I just didn't see you.
no, I didn't see that. So I pitched up and met Ursula and spoke to Sam Clark on his bike, and I
Yeah.
went, oh, an electric motorbike, and he went, yeah, they've been around for 20 years. So I was like, oh God, I've got a lot to learn. And I said, well, you know, what are they like compared to a big, powerful motorbike? Because it looks like one. I mean, he must have thought I was a right thicko. And he went, yeah, it'll do 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds. I was like, oh my God. And then, so he pootled off on the rally. And then Ursula from GREENFLEET introduced me to Lorna McAteer, who, you know, let's face it, is everybody's EV industry girl crush. She's
Oh,
amazing.
she is fantastic as the woman. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was just so generous with her time. It was amazing. So they were charging up something that looked like an old Land Rover, well, like a very
Yeah.
new Land Rover.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was like NW Motors, I think. So
Yeah, oh my God, I actually went in that and my mind's just gone blank about what it is. And they'll probably be Lorna will be listening, or someone will be going, I was actually in it, but I didn't drive it. So yes.
so I was saying, oh gosh, you know, my ex-husband had a Land Rover.
Spartan. It's called the
Yes, that's
Spartan.
it. That's it.
And thank God it came back to me.
Thank you. Well done. And I was just going, oh God, they're horrible to drive. And I used to drive it to an MOT, and I'd like need a chiropractor to get my shoulders reset. And she said, look how they're driving it. And I went, are you serious? And she went, yeah. So I literally drove it around the car park, quite a big car park. And honestly, the grin on my face was just mad. And I was driving back on this beautiful sunny day through Wales, just through the hills and everything, just going, this is my new job. I can't actually believe it. It was such good fun. And then, you know, cut to November, we had the first EV rally coincided with Climate Action Wales Week in Wales. So that's the more sort of consumer side of it. And the purpose of the GREENFLEET rally was initially to prove what EVs can do, and to prove that they can get around Wales. And one of the things that Transport for Wales has done on behalf of Welsh Government is plug the gaps in the strategic road network. So there was commercial spots here, there and everywhere. And then we just looked and said, well, you know, what bits are missing? So they did that. And one of them we stopped at the rally last year, and it's at Craigenors Country Park. So
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
it's one of Kevin Booker's babies, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely awesome. It's just a fantastic site. So yeah, so we poodled off. I was in a team with Kevin and his boss Simone, and we had 2 Konas, and we went on a wiggly route from Cardiff up through Powys Castle and across over to Bangor, Carnarvon actually, and we didn't have to charge at once.
If
And
you're
it's,
in with Kevin, actually, you won't have to. Yeah. Because
yeah,
Kevin's
well,
the most efficient driver I've ever known in my life, but that's what he got his Guinness World Records from,
exactly.
you know.
We only came third in last year's GREENFLEET rally, so I think he was possibly a bit miffed. But I think that was because the cone is just too efficient, so you can't. It's really difficult to go over and above something that's amazing anyway. So yeah, it's quite. It was a really good learning experience because I had the second day I was in the car with Kev all day and just asking him anything and everything. And you know, you just get to learn so lot. And we had a stop in a little town in North Wales called Bethesda. And there's a really awesome community organisation called Partneriaeth Ogwen. They had just taken delivery of a club car from Trudani, who Welsh Government are also sponsoring to see if we can roll out car clubs effectively in rural Wales. And when we got there, it was mad. The local school we'd arranged to be there, and it was just full of, I think there must have been some girls there, but basically teenage boys in the front of this Megane, in the back of a Megane, about 6 of them sitting in the boot of a Megane. But they had a brilliant morning because they got to hear initially from Chris and Julie Ramsey about their pole to pole expedition, and then they got to hear from Kevin Booker about his world records. So yeah, in the course of half an hour, they got to meet 3 people who between them have got about 6 Guinness World Records. It was quite amazing.
Amazing,
And
yeah.
that was really nice. And Chris and Julie said it was one of their highlights as well. But it's so difficult to plan things on the event because everybody's going at their own pace. So to get some kind of public engagement was just brilliant. It was amazing. And then we stopped at the National Library and everybody was chatting and looking at the cars there as well. So yeah, it was really cool. And this year it's in October, and instead of Welsh Government sponsoring it this year, Transport for Wales is actually the headline sponsor. So we're busy working with GREENFLEET and planning another exciting route that'll hopefully showcase a bit of Wales and get some kind of engagement on the route as well. So yeah, really looking forward to that.
Oh, and I mean, Wales was just going for the, talking to the bit, talking about the bit that you were saying with regards to coming through Hay on Wye, the Welsh countryside we went through just on that final day of the rally last year was just amazing. I'll just quickly digress by Michelle and Breffett and I were from Women Drive Electric. We were both in the car then, and there was a little diversion we had to take over this Humpty Back bridge with kind of like wooden slats on it, and we were in a Tesla Model Y, and it was just, I was like, oh my God, you couldn't write this, it was so tiny. And then you had to pay £1 at the other side. It was a tiny, tiny bridge, pay £1 at the other side. And I kept trying, I can't get it. And then we thought we'd got everything. And then then it goes, do you want a receipt? No, oh my God, no, I don't want a receipt. But I had to press the button and lean out. It was just hilarious.
We
So,
had
but yeah,
we
beautiful,
had
beautiful journey.
Oh, it was the day one. There was a section of road that was closed, and there's that phrase: "If in doubt, read the instructions." Anybody who put their sat nav on ended up on the block road, and so the first checkpoint was a bit of a pain in the neck. So we had to, that caused a few diversions, but just good fun. And we were so lucky last year because I was expecting it to be, cold, dark and miserable. And we just had blue skies and sunshine, and it was, oh, you couldn't have asked for better conditions. It was amazing. It's
And
really
that
good.
and that makes such a massive difference. But what I was gonna do was go back to our what we just kind of slipped in a little bit earlier, which was this whole um, moving to EVs is going to cost people jobs, because I think that in itself that is a conversation in itself, isn't it? Me and you've talked about this before, anyway. And if we kind of segue slightly to what you've done, in your background, and also actually, do you know what? Because I've done a load of moves, and done
Yeah.
various different things. Actually, the skills side of things is really important, because there are transferable skills in this sector and coming from various other sectors, aren't there?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's really struck me when I've been listening to your podcast is the kind of backgrounds that people have come from to land an EV. Because if you think about it, 20 years ago, people weren't working in EV. I joked earlier about Windows didn't exist, but
Yeah.
if you'd said to me 20 years ago, you'll be looking at putting boxes in the ground that will fuel cars from an electricity supply, I'd gone, oh, right, okay, yeah, great, smashing, bit like Windows.
Yeah.
Um, so, just a few that you've had on recently. You had Mark Potter on, who's from an aviation background. You've had Dev Channa, who's energy background, which is linked anyway. Suki Chug has got that air quality background. And then when I look at just the local authorities, when Transport for Wales, I mean, they deal with them on a more regular basis than I do, but we've got people in energy teams or climate change teams or roads teams, highways teams, or transport teams. It's not always the transport team. And if you think about the main driver for that switch to electrification, that main driver is climate change. So it's not actually a transport problem, but transport is the solution, because in Wales we've got, I think it's 70, well, no, I don't think, 72% of road transport emissions come from cars and light goods vehicles. And
Blimey. In
trans
Wales. Good
in
God.
Wales, yeah, yeah. And transport was the third biggest emitter. Now that we've worked so hard to get power stations not running off fossil fuels, it's probably the second biggest emitter of carbon dioxide. So it's got a massive role to play. And if you look at things like the Climate Change Commission's report, they're saying, what can consumers do? What is the biggest thing we can do? And it's moving to electric vehicles, and it's looking at alternative ways to heat our homes, like heat pumps or solar panels. It's all those kind of things. So they are things that people will be doing as a matter of course over the next few years. And it's a massive change, but it was a massive change when people had to start wearing seatbelts, and some of them didn't like it, or when there was a drink driving law introduced and some people didn't like it, or petrol cars have been running for goodness knows how long, and all of a sudden there was diesel to contend with, and well, what's that about then? So there's a natural evolution of things anyway, and this is just part of that evolution.
And if you think about it, going right back to old Henry Ford's days in the 1930s, in fact, before this, I suppose, kind of because of my improvement background, we look at Henry Ford was kind of like the first individual to put together a proper production line for cars, because before it used to, or it was horse and cart, darling, or kind of it was, if there were cars being produced, they were sort of just produced like one at a time, as in it was a cottage industry, and it was very small. But then look at what happened, and that was change, wasn't it? That was a massive change.
But
It's
even if we're both from up north. If you think about before we were born, the north and other parts, you know, the Midlands, all that industrial heartland of Britain, it was just smog city.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've got rid of that smog and we've sandblasted buildings and they look gorgeous again. But flipping out, you know, progress is progress. You can hold on in a nostalgic fashion as much as you want, but do you really want to live in some slum house and have horse and carts outside where there's so much horse poo in the road it's nobody's business and horses just die and they just leave them there to rot? You know, no, you don't want to go back to that. So it's progress.
It
Just
is
moving
progress
forward.
and innovation. And
Yeah.
actually, my mum, bless her, when she was around, I moved down, like I said, in '95, and mum and dad came down around '97 one time, and I remember my mum saying, "There's not many chimneys round here, are there?" Well, that's a good thing, mum. You know what I mean? Because it was, and you know, my first job was actually working as a clerk or a clerk or whatever you wanted to call them in a factory, because it was kind of woolen. We were in the woolen industry, you know, in Halifax was kind of part of the woolen industry, and a lot of that, as you know, in fact, I'd say probably all of it's gone now. In fact, my first ever job is now Tesco's in Halifax. So, so you know, things change, things move on,
Yeah.
and jobs change. You know, I said
Yeah.
to you earlier, didn't I? Can you imagine? You know, like we said, you said 20 years ago. 20 years ago, would you have actually thought about there being social media managers and things like that? It's just
No.
kind of what social what, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So things do move on. So it's kind of looking at how these transferable skills, how you can take these transferable skills into from other sectors into all of the sectors that are involved in EVs or renewables or decarbonisation. I mean, what do you kind of think about sort of if we, I'm going to hone in for a second, because me and you talked about this before, and there's something that Belinda Guy from Fuse has just shared this
Mm.
morning, hasn't there, about kind of women in automotive specifically, and I thought that was quite interesting, wasn't it?
Mm. Yeah.
We probably
Yeah.
need to give a bit of context though. Do you want to give a little bit, or shall I give the little bit of context?
No, it was Belinda saying that, you know, somebody had made a comment that women don't go into automotive because they don't want to get their hands dirty.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, some women like getting their hands really dirty, but others don't, and some men don't either. You know, my dad, complete sales rep, pen pusher, never got his hands dirty in his life, and
Mm.
quite liked it that way. So you know, it's just a ridiculous generalisation, isn't it? It's insane. But I remember when I was at school a long time ago, because I did maths, physics, chemistry A level, and I fancied doing accountancy. Somebody sort of said, "Oh, well, you could go into science and engineering," and I was like, "Oh, thank you." Did they explain what it was? No, they didn't. If I was looking, you know, if I could hop back then to being 18, I think I'd have rather done civil engineering or quantity surveying than I did accountancy. But, you know, you just didn't know what they were. And I think um, there's a real need for people to, especially young people, to understand what an absolutely massive range of careers are out there. And when I say careers, they can be jobs. They don't have to be careers. You can do something for 5 years, 10 years, and then switch. You know, the number of people who have multiple career changes nowadays is far higher than the number of people, probably doctors and dentists, or lawyers, who do the same thing all their lives. So you know, people have to adapt. I've got a friend whose partner used to be a coal miner back in the
Mm.
day, and the coal mine shut, and then he became an airline pilot. Well, that's fun and chalk.
Wow.
I know,
What? Oh my God, that's a bit different.
I know. It's a real chalk and cheese tale. But you know, people do. They just adapt, or they just
Mm.
get tired of doing what they're doing. And it's everything. It's really practical, hands-on skills that years ago would have been apprenticeships. Then apprenticeships fell out of fashion. Then apprenticeships came back, and but there's really practical things about doing the installs of the charging infrastructure, or maintaining the vehicles, and that's, for girls or boys, that's not quite as greasy as it used to be with a fossil fueled car, is it? You know, there's you're not getting the
Less
same
grease to fall out.
drips and
There's no
leaks. Yeah,
fun pumping like that, is there? Yeah, in an EV, you know, there's still brake fluid and stuff like that, but it's really not kind of that kind of um in sector anymore, is it? And
yeah,
also just thinking about the job for life, kind of inverted
yeah,
commas, like you just said, it's not really from my dad's day. It was like, oh, you stay in the same job for however many years, and actually,
yeah.
people don't do that anymore. They go and move around because you want to get those different experiences, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. And if you think about donkey's years since, there'd be some, usually a bloke, at the bottom of the drive, covered in oil, tinkering with his car. Well,
That
you
was
don't
my
do that
dad.
anymore, because your engine's just a sealed unit.
Mm.
Even on an ice car, people just don't do that unless they've got some fantastic, beautiful vintage car that they're looking after. But yeah, things change, and people do things differently. But it's everything, isn't it? It's from design through to manufacture through to maintenance. Literally just on the practical level, for whether it's vehicles or back end tech or charging infrastructure, tires, batteries, the whole kit caboodle. There's so much there. But then there's the more traditional jobs, like the local authority jobs. You've still got people in procurement or legal or planning or highways who are looking at it. And then on a sort of slightly more macro level, you've got the economists looking at what it means. You're going to have people doing carbon accounting. There's a whole range of jobs connected to the EV industry that you probably don't look at unless you sort of sit down there and do a bit of a mind map about it.
And if you think about kind of like the fact that all the councils that have, or local authorities that have declared a climate emergency, like you said about the carbon accounting, it's not just that, is it? It's kind of it's ESG. It's kind of that's another phrase, environmental, social and governance. People didn't know about because
Yeah,
you heard however many years ago. I mean, I've been with my husband now for, over 20 years, and he's been working in climate change since, climate science since then. And I knew certain words, but actually these things now people are actually starting to understand it, and the knock-on effect about, oh, what do we, because of what's being said, about the climate and us having to decarbonize. That means these things, and all
yeah,
of these things that kind of come off from it are all different parts of the same different sectors. But right, okay, we need to look at that. We need to look at this, aren't they?
yeah. And even the basic stuff that you didn't do 20 years ago, like sorting out your plastics and your cardboard and your glass jars and chucking them in different bins. It's just commonplace nowadays, isn't it? But just behaviour change takes a little while, and people grumble about it, and then they'll crack on with it.
And get used to it, and actually go, oh, do you know what? It's not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah. Or don't
You
even think about it. That's the other thing. They sometimes just don't even think about it.
because it's natural. You just get used to it. It goes from change and people folding their arms and going, I don't like this, right through to kind of like going, oh, why do we just do this now? Like I
Yeah.
remember when when they started paying for plastic bags, you had to pay, like, you'd start paying 10p for your plastic bags at the supermarket or whatever. But I remember my husband had been taking plastic, carrier bags to put shopping in for ages, and I was like, oh, this is a bit weird. And now it's just like, yeah, I've got my jute bag with my Marks and
Yeah.
Spencers, and I've got my plastic, and I never take enough to the supermarket. But that's another thing. I always end up buying far too many things that he probably goes, why do you buy that? But anyway, these are the things that we do, aren't they? These are the things
Yeah.
that we change over time. But I was going to say, with kind of going back to the sort of women in the sector. We've just yesterday had so this is going to give you a bit of an idea. When we recorded this, the Lionesses won the Women's Euro final, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what, and I put this as a comment on Belinda's post actually, about, because she was saying about women and being sort of involved in the automotive sector, and I just thought, if we take a leaf out of the Lionesses book, and even my husband was watching it. I mean, I'm not a footy fan, so I can't say that I was particularly. I was interested in the result,
Yeah.
but actually, if you think about it, however many number of, like 10 years ago, yes, there was probably women's football out there, but they've just had this massive following. The following's kind of increased, but what is it that we need to do to kind of, I'm not just talking about women full stop, but it's about getting people to see things differently, like see automotive differently. But, how did they, if you think about it, how did they do it? Was it just about women, more women talking about it, or was it about men and women talking about it? How do you bring these skills into being, and the acceptance of that? Versus, because if it happens naturally, it could be years and years. But it feels like, and I put this as well in the post, we used to have a thing in social media called a thunderclap. Before you could kind of post to lots of places, you kind of get people involved in something that was really interesting. And I was kind of like, so this is probably about 10 years ago. I was doing a lot of allergy awareness stuff.
Okay.
Like I say, because I've moved around and done different stuff as well. But actually, this social media thing called the Thunderclap, which was a thing, you literally got lots of people involved, and you kind of posted. It was just like, the idea was a bit, I suppose, in a way, a bit like what GREENFLEET do. Everybody's posting about it. But then it was called this Thunderclap that kind of was literally loads of people coming together and sharing information. It feels like we need to kind of push things forward in that way, to me.
Yeah, so we've got, well, I mean, there's sort of two sides of it. There's the general automotive EV field, and then there's the sort of female angle for it. And I was listening to last Friday's EV Cafe, and they were saying that there was a Women in Transport report that said that there were fewer women in transport, which is disappointing, because all the ones, there's quite a decent female contingent in TFW, or at least on the sort of side that I was working in, which was more the bus side rather than the rail side. And I know Women in Transport try and do a lot of work for lobbying. And and circling back to your question about the Lionesses, what's the difference? I guess it's just public exposure to role models. And when you think about it, we are very, very lucky in the EV world. And one of the things that I absolutely flipping love about it is how giving people are. So I mentioned Lorna when I first met her. There's obvious reasons why she's GREENFLEET's #1 influencer. I mean, she is just so giving. You've got people like Sarah Sloman, who does a brilliant job. She joined us on the rally last year, and it was great to have her there. You've got Jill Noel doing what she's doing. We mentioned earlier Kate Tyrrell and the Charge Safe and that lobbying thing. And then if you look at it, we've got a head of EVA England who's female, and they do a heck of a lot of lobbying around Parliament. Charge UK have got a female head. We've got in Scotland a female transport minister in England's female, Minister for Future Roads is female. So there is a change, but it is slow. But the bigger question, whether they're females or not, irrespective of how somebody identifies, how do we get them to just think that automotive or EV is fun or interesting, or I just want to say sexy, because it quite is a lot of the time. Quite cool.
Yeah, and it's not just men that like cars either, is it? Women,
no,
I'm
God,
not,
no.
I was never a massive. Right, okay. I would say I was a petrol head, as in, if you call a petrol head somebody who likes cars, because of my older brothers, I love cars, just love them. My husband's just not interested in the slightest, but to me, I really love it. And also used to see my dad tinkering under the car, like you said, about doing all his oil changes and all this malarkey. So, that's always been a thing in our family. But so it's not just men.
No.
But it's about changing the narrative, isn't it? So that we kind of attract people. But maybe we do need that kind of thunderclap from everybody, because you've just listed lots of brilliant women.
And
I
that's
mean,
just
me
a
and
small
you,
number. Yeah.
yeah, me and you were in a WhatsApp group, aren't we? And there's loads of fantastic women in there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so maybe it's got to be us introducing all of this to people and being a bit more kind of out there on socials, or I do quite a lot on socials, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But just looking at younger people and what they're looking at for careers, there is very much a push to get them to do things that are perceived as high earning things. So, everybody wants to be a doctor, everybody wants to be a dentist, everybody wants to be a lawyer, depending on what school you go to. And there's so many other things out there. There's a real range of things, and not everybody's academic. Some people are a lot more practical, and there's just that massive range of different things that people can do, whether it's something design related, something economics related, something practical that they're doing with their hands. But it's just, I think, just getting them enthused about it. And I suppose years ago, if you lived near Birmingham, you probably went to work for British Leyland, or if you live near Dagenham, you went to work at Ford, in the way that if you lived in Mansfield, you went down a pit. And there isn't that natural path where people go anymore. So I think it is a challenge for sure to just get people thinking about different careers. They don't all have to be a wag or an influencer. They can actually do something practical with their lives.
Exactly. And I could
That was a bit
talk to
judgy,
you for
wasn't it?
like,
Sorry.
no. I was going to say I could talk to you for blooming ages about this stuff, and I probably think we need. I think we need to kind of get you back on another time,
Sorry.
because I think. Did you say sorry then? Stop
I
saying sorry.
did. No, I just, yeah, no, I did, because I am just really passionate about it, as you know. So,
Yeah.
you have to shut me up.
No, listen, and actually, for everybody watching and listening, find this woman on LinkedIn, because she's on there and she's brilliant, and we have met face to face, and we even had a hug, didn't we? And
Did,
you
yeah.
supported me in the audience when I was speaking on my first panel session at Move. So thank you for doing that. You and Teresa Swift were both there to support me, which was fantastic. So, but look, I am going to say let's we're going to come back to this, right? But my final question is going to be, what keeps you going in all of this? All of the different things that you've done, what keeps you going, especially now?
Um, I think it's just being in roles or working with organisations where there are people that inspire you, where there is change, where there's innovation, where there's creativity. And it's not every day somebody's coming up with a brilliant idea, but just people who are working towards making things better. And when I say making things better, that could be back at Boots when it was at the tablet factory and they wanted to make that more efficient, or they were trying to develop some hypertensive drug, or whatever it was, through to Transport for Wales, where they are trying to come up with a bus network which reaches more people across Wales, so that we've got more efficient services that link together with other modes of transport as well. So it's just people who are trying their best. Just it's the people.
Love it.
Always.
Well, right, okay. So on that note, I think this is a really good place for us to stop. We've chatted so much, and like I said to you, me and you are going to keep chatting anyway, aren't we? We've got lots to talk about. Just being northern, you know. So Tracy, I just want to say thank you. You're just such a wonderful person, and you know, lots of people who come on here are brilliant. You are kind of one of those really outstanding people that I've not known very, very long, but we've just hit it off so much, you know, and you've got a heart of gold. So thank you for joining me.
That's a hell of an accolade. Thank you so much. And I'm chuffed to be here. Never been invited on a podcast before, so I was, believe it or not, a little bit nervous, and I've probably spoken too quickly and been too giddy. But
you've been fine.
Yeah, thank you for being so generous, Liz. Really appreciate it.
Oh no,
great to talk to
bless you. And listen, like I say to everybody, you know, just check her out on LinkedIn. Look at all the wonderful work that, you know, kind of the Welsh Government are doing, and Transport for Wales and everybody, you know, everywhere. And I will share your links in the show notes anyway. And as I always say every week, please just like, subscribe and share, you know, the videos, or if you're listening on audio, please just, you know, share it with friends, family, you know, everybody. And on that note, I'm just going to say thanks to Tracy, and thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're a charge point operator, local authority or stakeholder in EV charging, I'd love to talk to you about our Charge Point Evolution framework. It's designed to help you create a seamless EV driver journey, boost utilisation and maximise your return on investment. Alternatively, if you know someone who'd be a great podcast guest or might be interested in sponsoring an episode, you can email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks again for watching.